I want to get into the UFC card this weekend. A ton of really fun fights. We're gonna kick things off. Just talking about the main event. This one, I've been trying to think lately, like what's the outcome gonna be? Who's gonna be able to come up on top in this fight? Jorge Masvidal or Colby Covington? I've looked at a lot of different things. Obviously, both of these guys have faced the champ Kamaru Usman, and they both lost. Now, the way they've lost it, it's been totally different. Colby Covington has been the closest to beating Kamaru. Both times his fights went to decision. I think both fights were very close. You know, I think Kamaru won both fights, but not like he didn't outright dominate. It's probably 3 rounds to two. And then especially in the second fight, like Usman dropped Covington and everything. So even that one, like Usman won, but Colby was very close. And outside of Gilbert Burns, like stunning Usman, like nobody really has been like that as of late fighting Usman. And Masvidal, his 2 fights, the first fight is the one he took on like super short notice. I think it was 6 days notice. It was a 5 round decision, kind of a boring fight. A lot of like clinch control. It wasn't a lot of stand up fighting, a lot of toe stomps and things like that. I think that was like one of the fights where people were giving Usman some hate. And Colby, I think, has been one of these dudes that pushes some of these nicknames, but like the Kamaru Snoozman and things like that. But then like since then, Usman he's dominated every fight he's been in. He's either got a KO or it's been a super fun fight. And then he fought Masvidal again for the second time. This was on Masvidal's full camp, and I think it was in the second round where he knocked Masvidal out cold. It was a brutal knockout. They had like those 8K cameras in there, and like you could see the sweat splatter off on the camera, and it was a crazy knockout. So both of these guys, they kind of had different fights with Usman, but like the whole thing is MMA math doesn't always work like that. Like just because Usman dominated Jorge doesn't mean that Colby's gonna dominate Jorge just because he fought Usman closely. I think there's there's a couple things that I look at it. I don't think Colby has the ability to knock out Jorge on the feet, but I also don't think that Colby has the strength that Usman has to be able to hold him in positions. And Jorge really does have underrated grappling. His wrestling, and then when Jorge's on his feet, he's got crazy power in both hands. He's a very fun fighter to watch. So it's interesting to think, like if I had to like make a prediction, I'd say I'm like probably 60% leaning towards Colby, probably by decision. But then there's like there's a good chance to me, like if these dudes do stand up, which I think they probably will, because I don't think Colby's just going to be able to take him down for 25 straight minutes. I think when they're standing up, I'd say like Jorge probably has the advantage, and he's got the power to put Colby's lights out, and he wants to. Like both of these dudes want to go in and get the kill. You get the whole backstory, former best friends and whatnot, and these guys hate each other. The last dude I could tell that Jorge truly hated was Ben Askren, and we saw how that happened. I do not think that Colby's going to shoot for a double leg within 5 seconds and get kneed in the face and knocked out. But like Colby could very well get knocked out in this fight. He's shown that like Usman dropped him in the last fight even, so it's like, could Masvidal put his lights out? Very real chance that happens. I wouldn't bet on it. I don't want to lose money on this fight. I think it could really go either way. I think both dudes are a ton of fun to watch. The press conference, to me, I thought could have been way better. I don't think that their like styles of trash talk match up well. They're both trying to talk over each other. They're saying some of the same type of things, and it was just kind of corny. Like, we get it. You guys hate each other. We're excited to see what happens in the ring on Saturday. But that's just my take on it. Both guys, it's funny because they're both coming off of losses and they're headlining a pay-per-view. Colby recently lost to Usman, and then the fight before that he beat Tyron Woodley. And then Jorge's coming off of 2 straight losses to Usman. And then before that was like his run in 2019. But here we are. We're in 2022. He fought once in 2021 and once in 2020 and once in 2021. So we'll see. I think it would be cool to see Jorge kind of get, some of that momentum back. In 2019 it was like this dude is on top of the world, and up and coming guy, like obviously not an up and coming as in like he's a young dude or anything, but like in terms of the hype, building another like superstar for MMA, he was definitely that dude. And I mean, if he goes out there and smokes Colby, he could be that dude again very quickly. I think the world would lose it. And Colby has a ton of haters, just because of the WWE persona that he carries and everything like that. So I'm sure that the world would love to see Masvidal knock him out. And then like to go over some of the other fights, we got RDA versus Moicano. This is a short notice fight. Rafael Fiziev, he got COVID. He was supposed to fight RDA, the battle of the Rafaels, who's the best in the UFC. And RDA is just game for whatever. He was basically like, anyone who's willing to step in the cage with me, I'm ready to go. This is a dude who fought a bunch of fights at 170. He used to be the champ at 155. And he's ready to go. Like, once that fight with Fiziev fell through, RDA was ready to go. Like, whoever's next, I'm ready. Moicano was the dude that was, willing to sign the contract. It's funny because he just fought on February 12th against Alexander Hernandez, and apparently, like, he was just on a flight back to Brazil. The plane lands. He's like, I want to take this fight. Pretty much right away, flies right back to the U.S. And then he weighs in at 160, which it's only 5 pounds different than what he's normally used to weighing in. So that's crazy that he took that fight on such short notice. We are like it is a little bit of a bummer that, Islam Makhachev was supposed to be the dude to fight RDA. They have had that fight booked numerous times in the past, and it's always fallen through. Islam this week, like, decided to start tweeting. Maybe it wasn't Islam, it could have been Ali, but, he was tweeting, like, I'm ready to go. I'll jump in on, a week's notice, fight RDA. And it was like, dude, that's big, because, like, right now people have questions over the competition that Islam has fought. You can't really question the win streak and everything, but, like, the fact that he hasn't really beaten anybody that's in the top 5 or, really even, outside of Dan Hooker. I think Dan Hooker was ranked 6th or 7th when they fought. But he hasn't really had that top 5 opponent. And RDA is, I think he's fringe top 5. I want to say he's 6 right now. But he's a former champ. So, like, getting a win over RDA, I think, does a little bit more than even getting a win over Dan Hooker. And, RDA was game. He's ready to do even 170, he said. Islam, like, says that he's ready to do it too. And then the next day, Dana comes out and says that Islam didn't want the fight. He just publicly said he did, but he didn't actually want the fight. And now it's like they're making Islam potentially fight Dariush again. Well, not again, but, like, potentially rebook that fight. And it's like, dude, Islam totally missed out, because either he decided to tweet saying that he's interested in the fight that he wasn't interested in, or his manager had his social media account and possibly ruined his chance to fight for the belt. But I don't know. Obviously, there's multiple sides to the story, but the other thing to keep in mind is, like, this Gaethje Oliveira fight hasn't even happened yet. I don't even know if it's, like, officially booked, but that's kind of what's penciled in for the next fight. They're probably gonna fight sometime mid-year or so, from what I've heard. And even if Islam does rebook the fight against Dariush, we're sitting at the beginning of March, so there's a very real chance that happens around the same time as the lightweight championship goes down. And if that were to happen, then that basically sets Islam up to fight for the belt next, which is what he wants anyways. He just needs to get another win against the toughest guy that he's ever fought. But I think he's probably still the favorite in that matchup, and I think that's a really fun fight. definitely would want to see that, actually happen. But Moicano comes in. This dude's fun to watch. He's great jujitsu fighter. I think he's got like most of his like finishes in his career are submissions. And then obviously RDA's former champ. He's got it all. I think this is going to be a very interesting fight. Moicano's making a big step up as far as like talent from what he's faced recently. But it's going to be fun to watch on short notice. It's at 160. And then kind of moving past that, let's talk some of the other fights here. So we got Edson Barbosa versus Bryce Mitchell. This is going to be a super fun fight. I kind of gave a little bit of my thoughts on like the whole interview that Bryce Mitchell had recently. Bryce Mitchell's he's an entertaining dude. He's practically undefeated. I think he's got one loss. I've tried to look like, if you look on SureDog or most of the MMA sites as far as the record goes, the only loss I've able to see is like loss from not the Contender Series, from the Ultimate Fighter, which I thought was an exhibition. So, but the UFC like officially says he's 14-1. So, he's lost one fight. Barbosa is a veteran of the game. He's fought a bunch of dudes, mostly at lightweight. He moved down to 145. He's had some really good fights there. Recently, he lost to Giga. That's a stand-up war. But before that, he had the crazy knockout on Shane Burgos. That was like the delayed knockout. And then he had a fight against Dan Ige as well, where he won. So he's really dangerous at 145. And then Bryce Mitchell just has crazy ground game. And he typically dominates his opponents in that, taking them down, pulling off some crazy submissions and stuff. But, he starts out standing up. I'm curious to see, this is going to, it's a striker versus a grappler. I'm curious to see how this matchup goes down. It is going to be fun too. Mitchell was able to pull off the camo shorts. Not a lot of dudes in the UFC get to do like any kind of customization, like really at all. It seems like they're, you get like kind of a couple different options as far as the fit of the shorts go. We've seen guys like they want to have like the more loose shorts, so they literally cut them. And Bryce Mitchell's like able to pull off getting some camo shorts on. Supposedly it was kind of like short notice too, so that's crazy. And I think if he wins, it kind of puts like this puts him in the top 10, and he's gonna be like in the driver's seat to fight bigger opponents. And then if Barbosa wins, he's also right back in the winning boat. Probably a couple more fights away from potentially getting a title shot. So this is a really fun fight at featherweight. And then more on the card. We've got Kevin Holland making his 170-pound welterweight debut against Alex Cowboy Oliveira. This is fun. I always like watching Kevin Holland fight. It was fun like during the pandemic. 2020 is like when he went on. I think he had 5 wins in the year. Just fighting like every other weekend. It felt like tons of crazy knockouts. He had that knockout on his back against Jacare. And then 2021 comes around, and he had a horrible year. He jumped high, basically into potentially title contention. Like he's fighting contenders. He fought Vittori and he fought Brunson. I don't remember which was first. But basically both dudes just dominated wrestling. And then like he was gonna take kind of a step down and face a guy that wasn't like ranked really high and fight Kyle Dawkins at the end of the year. And he had that like freak headbutt. He got like basically knocked out by a headbutt and then choked out. And then after the fight, they like reversed it and said it was a no contest. So he's kind of fallen down a little bit in terms of a couple losses, but they're losses to really good dudes and like high caliber wrestlers. And now he's going to be able to go down at 170, like, which he cut weight too. He made the weight and everything. And he's going to, hopefully be able to rejuvenate his career and get some more wins. And then Cowboy Oliveira is a legit dude too. He's also on kind of I think it's a 3-fight losing streak. But you know, he's been in the game for a really long time. I think it's a good opponent for Kevin Holland's debut at that weight class at least. And then, you know, this is the card that's going to open up the main card, or the fight that's going to open up the main card. This is Sergey Spivak versus Greg Hardy. Greg Hardy is just super controversial name. People are upset that he's getting another main card pay per view event. It's like people are tuning in to watch this dude win or lose. He is, you know, he's a well known name because of the domestic violence issues for sure, but also because he's a former NFL player and like was a good NFL player at that as well. So people tune in for the fact that he hit a woman. People want to tune in to watch him lose. But he's also like, he's a guy out here saying some crazy stuff. He said he's like the most, I think he said the most dangerous dude in the entire world. Earlier this week, and it's like, dude, I mean, there's 15 to 20 heavyweights alone that would smoke you in the UFC even. But we're gonna see. I mean, this is he's clearly an athlete. This is a dude who's like cutting a ton of weight to get to 266. Because he's using that pound overage. But he's got the power. I mean, he stunned Tai Tuivasa in his last fight. He just got knocked out immediately after because he kind of ran in there. And then obviously, like, Greg Hardy doesn't have the ground game. So if Spivak takes this down, I think Spivak wins. You know, Greg Hardy's like, the only fight I could remember with him getting taken down was against Marcin Tybura, and he just got smashed on the ground. And Spivak has a lot. I think he's got, I want to say it's 47-48% of his wins are via submission. So this is a dude, like, he gets you on the ground, he's probably going to finish Hardy that way. And if not, like, if he doesn't get him on the ground, Hardy's going to have the size advantage. He's going to be probably 40-50 pounds heavier than the dude. I think Spivak weighed in at in the 240s. So at the minimum, like right now, Hardy's 20 over, but he cut down to 266, so he's probably going to be even more than that. So if it stands up, Spivak has the ability to knock him out too, but I feel like that would kind of lean in Hardy's direction to give him the win there if it is a stand-up fight. But nonetheless, it's going to be exciting to watch. And then I want to talk about a couple of the prelim fights. Jalen Turner versus Jamie Mularkey. I think this is going to be a fun fight. Jalen Turner is huge for 155. I saw a video on UFC Embedded where he was like shaking hands with RDA, and he looks way bigger than RDA. Like he could be fighting like a class or two above RDA. So I think that'll be a fun fight. And then Brian Kelleher versus Umar Nurmagomedov. This is Khabib's cousin. I'm pretty sure Khabib's going to be cornering him. But Kelleher is actually like pretty good ground guy. Like in most of his fights, I think that I've seen he's wrestle a heavy approach. But his nickname's Boom too, so he's got like the knockout power. So I think it's going to be an interesting matchup. Brian, from most of the fights I've seen him, they've been at 135 though. So this is at 145. So we'll see how much bigger Umar is when they get into the octagon and everything. But I think that's going to be a fun fight. I'm curious to see how the grappling exchanges play out and everything.